Welcome to another Ask GCN Anything. Si and I are going to turn things on their heads today by doing the rapid fire round first.
That's right, we're going to have a much slower start to the video than normal.
Yeah, ease ourselves in gently. First up, Kyle Deans, underneath last week's Ask GCN Anything, says, do you guys agree that it's no longer possible for riders to do well in the Giro and do well at the Tour de France? Look at Quintana as an example. Well, we did go into this in this week's GCN show briefly, so if you haven't caught up with that, make sure you watch the show. But what we've got to remember is it's not just the double that he did this year, is it? He also competed at the Tour de France last year and the Vuelta, and he won the Vuelta and finished on the podium at the Tour de France. That is, in effect, 4 Grand Tours on the trot where he's tried to go for GC.
And he is doing pretty well, even if he's not winning. I suppose the question is, would he be winning if he hadn't done quite so much? I wonder whether he might, you know.
Yeah, I do think it will still be possible for someone at some point in the future. I don't think we should write it off just
With
yet.
a bit of luck as well, actually, because that comes into it, doesn't it? Right, next up, because this is the rapid fire round, don't forget. This is from Lawrence Liu. Why don't all riders in the Pro Peloton ride Aero Bikes if they have the option? Surely they can get them down to the lower weight limit. That's a really good point, actually. From my perspective, I don't think pros always necessarily make the most rational equipment decisions, do they? So, because obviously rider preference comes into it. But yeah, on paper, an aero bike, most aero bikes would be faster on any stage, whether they're mountain stages or flat stages. And if I was racing again, I would definitely ride an aero bike.
Well, back when I was racing for the Cervelo test team, we had a certain Carlos Sastre on the team who'd won the Tour de France, and we had all sorts of very clever engineers from Cervelo and Zip explaining to us, including Carlos, what were the best equipment choices for the mountains. And it would often be a 303 or even a 404 for mountain stages, but Carlos always went for the 202s and a much shallower, lighter climbing wheel because he much preferred the feeling on the descents actually rather than the climbs. He preferred the handling around hairpins, etc. as well. So it is an interesting one, but as Si said, pros often just like the feel of a certain piece of equipment, even if they're told it's not as fast.
Sticking with Cervelo, actually, I was out at the launch of their new R5 and I was talking to one of the engineers, well, the guy who actually designed it, basically, and he was saying that that for a while the riders only had the S5, but it's not just an aero bike, because the geometry is more aggressive, it's much twitchier, and so actually some of the riders have then chosen to go for the new R5, which is slightly more relaxed. It's not kind of boring to ride, but it's a little bit easier and a bit less demanding. Because if at the end of the day, if you're riding for 6 hours a day, you don't always want to be absolutely on point, do you? So yeah.
Well, we are really outdoing ourselves in this rapid fire round. That's 2 questions down already.
Yeah.
Right, third question today. Alexander Mikalev. Is it better to sprint from a non-ideal position but with full energy, or use some energy to get to a more ideal position, e.g. third, and sprint with slightly less energy? Almost impossible to answer, but you have to say Kittel has come from non-ideal positions to win a few stages of this year's Tour de France. But it's going to depend on so many factors, i.e. how far from the finish you're talking about, what the corners are like, how strung out the field is, etc. So.
Headwind, gradient. Yeah, there is actually no ideal position for a sprint. Just watch someone like Cav over the years, and yeah, he wins from all sorts of different positions, doesn't he?
And he goes on instinct, I think. Here's a question for you, Si, from the Beige Master 86.
Beige Master.
That's more like it, yeah, I think it probably is beige. In a world of marginal gains, why isn't anyone in the Pro Peloton running tubeless tyres when data suggests that rolling resistance are equal or better to tubular? And how much can a team save by not having to change wheels due to punctures, etc.? Yeah,
well, I think this comes back to a previous point. Teams or riders don't always make the rational decisions. Like we hear stories in the bunch about individual riders will join a team and they still want to use some ancient brand of tubular because they feel better on it, even though they're not faster. Sponsors come into it, so obviously not many riders and teams actually have a tubeless setup at their disposal. And also, yeah, I mean, people still like tubulars, even though they're technically probably not faster. You obviously maintain
we discussed this.
They, riders like the fact that you can ride a tubular when flat, but actually you can ride a tubeless tyre when flat as well.
Yeah, we're thinking of doing an experiment, a race on flat tyres.
Yeah, I'm constantly amazed by the fact that riders are always still on tubulars, but there we go.
Well, Liam Sangaku asks, what do the staff in team cars do when they need to go to the toilet while following the tour, or do they just hold it? Well, no, they can go. What they tend to do is get the second team car up when they need to stop to replace them in the convoy behind the main peloton, pull over to one side, do what they need to do, and then replace the second team car once they're done. So it is fairly simple, and they'll normally choose a quieter part of the race to do it.
There's always a supply of water bottles as well, isn't there?
That's very true, Si. And next up, Will Ball on Twitter. A nice video on the Mavic neutral service car, and something you don't always get to see. Who was the last rider to use a neutral service bike in the Tour de France?
Well, the last high-profile rider certainly was Chris Froome, infamously on Mont Ventoux, where he couldn't get one with speed plate pedals, could he? So Mavic actually went and changed the bikes that they put on top of the roof, and they used, which we let Lasty take over.
Yeah. If you didn't see the video that Will is talking about, it's coming up for you right now.
A lot of the interest with the neutral service cars is right here on top of the car, of course. So Mavic have up to 4 neutral service vehicles in each stage of the race here at the Tour de France, and the first 3 bikes on one of the cars are set up for the top 3 on general classification.
Right, well after that really slow video from Lasty, you should get back to more rapid fire questions, Dan.
Yes, the first of which is from Radio Station, again underneath last week's GCN show. Why would you choose to lay your arms flat on the hoods when going on the drops gets your body into relatively the same position?
Good question, that.
Yeah, well, we've discussed this again before we came on air, and we decided it was as much down to the setup of the bike, really. So when you look at the pros, they've got those slam stems that are already very low at the front. So for them, putting their elbows at 90 degrees on the hoods probably gets them a very nice flat back. Whereas if you're a sportive rider who's not quite so flexible and your bars are much higher at the front, you're probably not going to have a flat back by going on the hoods, even with your arms bent at 90 degrees. But on the drops, you will be.
Yeah, I think the important thing is probably that, like Dan said, arms at 90 degrees is more aero than having your arms stretched. So to get your back in that all-important flat position, then your forearms dictate how aero you are after that, don't they really?
Yeah, definitely. Here's one for you, Si, from Sir Roger. Why did it take so long for tour riders to start using easier gears? I know they had less to choose from in years gone by. But why not have a really big range on the back for those really steep climbs? He seems to have watched some old videos and seen riders grinding up the mountain.
Yeah, well, to a certain extent it was rider preference. I think riders actually preferred to use bigger gears. They felt it was more efficient. But then obviously technology has moved on. We've got a video actually about that, about the ever decreasing size of gears on riders' bikes. But the fact that we go, or have gone, from 7-speed to 8-speed to 9-speed, 10-speed, 11-speed has meant that you can still keep the same spread of gear ratios, or rather the same tightly spaced gear ratios lower down, but then actually just have bigger cogs.
Yeah,
so that's been
a big thing,
that is a big thing. And then also technology for things like rear derailleurs. So we have surround Wi-Fi, which means that you can use the same rear derailleur on a 1123 cassette and an 1132 cassette. And Shimano obviously have got their new Dura-Ace as well, which allows you to go up to a 30. So technology has allowed it basically. Whereas, yeah, I should imagine a tour rider in the 60s using what were they on? 5-speed blocks?
Yeah.
6-speed blocks? Yeah, you couldn't really have very big jumps.
No, I think also talking of technology, maybe power meters, because it does, when you're grinding, feel like you're putting more power out because it kind of hurts your muscles more.
Well, and your heart rate's often lower, isn't it? That's the other thing. You can have a lower heart rate for the same power. So if you only have a heart rate monitor, you might think that it is more efficient, even if your legs are completely toasted at the top.
Yeah. Another question on climbing from Ducati Man 1973, who's learned from us how to find the right gear before a climb, which you get on well with. He's also learned to get in and out of the saddle whilst climbing, but does find when standing that he needs to be in a harder gear, and it's tough to change back and forth. What's he missing?
Take it away, Dan.
Well, yeah, that's normal to want to go down to a lower RPM once you get out of the saddle. That goes for everyone, really, including the pros. You just need to get used to when it's best to change that gear. And thinking about my own personal riding style, I would say that just before I'm about to get out of the saddle, if you just click the gear then, you can get to a point where the gear then changes whilst you're not putting quite so much torque through the pedal, so the gear changing can be a lot smoother.
Yeah, just easing off, I think, probably, isn't it?
Yeah.
And yeah, when you get as experienced as Dan, you can do it very smoothly. That's all right, mate. Okay, next up, we've got this one from Dave Hogue. If the UCI require all parts to be commercially available, which they do, then why can't the general public buy those nice Continental Pro tyres that we were talking about in a couple of Tour de France tech things? Basically, brands are still allowed to test stuff in the Pro Peloton, which is good, because otherwise we wouldn't ever see products that have been tested by the pros, because they're pretty good at testing stuff, aren't they? So one would imagine that Conti will be releasing those tyres at some point in the future, and we will all be able to get our hands on them. But for now, they are Pro Edition only. And then, yeah.
Yeah, I think they've got a few months, haven't they, from prototype to be able to get it to the general public, because that is a rule. But there was a reply underneath Dave's question underneath last week's show asking about Froome's 3D printed tri-bars, and I don't know the answer to that.
I saw something.
I've never seen so excited. I'm excited myself now.
Well, no, so I read something on the internet just, I think it was this morning, in fact. Basically, Pinarello will be selling 3D printed tri-bars.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So they'll be costing gazillions of pounds, as you might imagine, but they will be available. And that, I guess, is a logical extension of that UCI rule. So I think that's good.
Sticking with UCI rules, Bruno Poiper on Twitter, should the UCI change the supply rule? Not drinking or eating isn't healthy. Supplying the last kilometres from stationary people, question mark. Well, the current rules bar riders from taking any food or drink from their team cars or from the side of the road in the first 50 kilometres of a stage and the last 20. Now, do change that on hot days to perhaps the first 20 Ks and the last 10. But it is an interesting point, and it's been raised since they gave those penalties, which they were then taken back for both George Bennett, was it, and Rigoberto Urán at the Tour de France. And we can't think of any reason why you shouldn't be allowed to have food or drink passed up to you in the last few Ks of a mountainous stage.
Well, I literally did just think of something.
Right.
I wonder whether the whole sticky bottle thing. So if you definitely
But
cannot...
from the side of the road.
Oh, sorry, but this is from team cars as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
I guess from a handout from the side of the road, you, as a rider, you're only ever at a disadvantage from grabbing a bottle.
Yeah.
Whereas from a team car, you could, you could push the rules a little bit.
Yeah,
I
true.
don't
We
see why
definitely don't think it should be allowed on sprint stages. That'd be quite dangerous. But yeah.
But who would do
very
it?
Hot mountainous stage. If you're gasping for water because your team car's been blocked behind, why not get it handed up from the side?
Yeah. The UCI commissaires were not looking at their best that day, were they, I don't think, with that decision?
No.
Again, watch the GCN show for a bit more controversy.
Next up, Liz Riley. How much difference does it make to carry speed onto a climb? Is the advantage mostly psychological?
Well, a bit depends on what climb you're riding onto. The shorter the climb, the more important it is to carry speed, and definitely not just psychological. I mean, absolutely massive difference. I suspect by the time you're talking about Alpe d'Huez being 13 kilometres long, the advantage is minimal, but certainly momentum makes a huge difference, doesn't it? We actually made a video about that.
We have, and it's right behind you on the screen right now. So if you'd like to see what difference momentum makes to a short, steep climb, the answer is here.
I wasn't looking very happy there. I can't remember what bit that was.
Because you hadn't found out about the Pinarello 3D bars.
Yeah, good point. Should we do it?
Yeah.
3 times. Right, ready? 3, 2, 1, go. Go.
Before we get on to our final question of the day, a reminder that if you'd like to ask us a question for next week's show, you can do so in the comment section below this video or using the hashtag TalkBack on Twitter or Facebook. Final question then comes from Tom Wilson underneath last week's show. Smart trainer or Powermeter, which will improve my training more? I live in London, so it's rainy in the winter and about 20 miles to get to nice, quiet roads.
Whoa, this is a tough question. I think the answer is going to be, it depends, doesn't it? Yeah. Really. So the pros and cons would be that with a smart trainer, you can obviously connect it up to a third-party app, so like Zwift or something, and so in the rainy London winters, you get really good quality workouts, great fun riding experience from the safety of your own home. And even actually when the weather's all right, if you've still got that 20-mile ride to good roads, then you still get really good quality training. But obviously when you're not on your smart trainer, then you don't have the luxury of looking at your numbers. So you can't go out and ride up climbs or do time trials. So you're slightly more limited, even if you would then perhaps enjoy more of your riding more of the time. What would you go for, mate?
I'm not sure. I'm a big proponent of a power meter, but if you look at something like the new Elite Diretto Smart Trainer, which has got a power meter inbuilt, which is accurate to plus or minus 2.5%, which is very similar to the best bike power meters, that really is quite impressive for under $900. And it does give you a much better experience on something like Go Zwift in terms of simulating the gradients, going up, downhill, drafting behind other riders, etc. And it sounds from Tom's specific circumstances, like most of the rides he'll be doing outside, due to the traffic and the distance, will be more endurance rides, which he can do on feel or with a heart rate monitor, and perhaps his more specific sessions will almost all be done indoors.
I'm going to disagree with you, Dan.
All right.
I'm going to go for a power meter because I would invest in a power meter and then I'd get a less expensive indoor trainer, but one with variable resistance, so maybe a magnetic resistance. So then when I was on something like Zwift and I decided I wanted to ride up Zwift Mountain, I could knock it down and increase the resistance, and that would feel realistic. And I've got my power meter so that, you know, it's translating my data accurately. But then I will ride outside a lot, even if I had to contend with 20 miles of traffic. And then I would be out on the open roads seeing what power I'm actually producing in the wild. And I think that that would be something I would miss if I didn't have a power meter and I just have a smart trainer.
I've seen you racing on Zwift, and I'm not sure you've got the energy to change the resistance manually whilst you're on it. Anyway, if you would like to see Zwift up close, it's actually from some time ago now, isn't it, when they first launched that app. We did a video where we also raced against Jens Vogt, but also had a look at how it felt to be in that immersive world on a smart trainer.
There's Jens actually, look, there he is. He doesn't know yet, we're about to smoke him. That's another high five moment, mate. Yeah.
Never racing him again.
No. We might actually. Yeah. Apparently he's going to bring a teammate this time.
Cy Richardson capitalises on the strong teamwork from Daniel Lloyd. He only has 200 metres to go now. He's got a finish line in his sight. He's got time to salute the crowd. He puts his arm in the air. Daniel Lloyd puts his arm in the air, 2Ks behind.
High five, Dan.
High two.
Well, that's the end of another rapid Ask GCN.
Yeah, don't worry everyone, we will slow down, take more time next week over your questions.
I doubt it. Yeah, don't forget to leave your questions in the comment section just down below. And also to subscribe if you haven't done so already by clicking on the globe. And if you'd like to purchase one of these t-shirts, I've got some dandruff on it, or a white one, you can do so by clicking on shop.globalcyclingnetwork.com, a link to which you should find on the screen right now.
This is a new one.
Can't see dandruff on that.
Nice, brilliant. Yeah. Anyway, right, how about some more content for you? Why not a couple of Genius Tour de France videos? We've got lightweight tech just down there and custom tech just over there. Both definitely well worth a watch. Also showing that a lot of Tour de France riders still prioritise lightweight and with added weights in the bottom bracket.
Yeah.